Commercial plumbing or residential plumbing? Which should you choose? Let's talk about it.
I'm Kenny Molotov, licensed plumber, professional magician, and entertainer. On this channel, I go through the ins and outs of my career in plumbing. I take you through a day in the life and we talk tools, theory, and mindset. I'm trying to give you an arsenal of knowledge and an online resource so you can take this trade head on and find yourself successful on the other end. Click subscribe, hit that bell notification, and let's talk pipes.
Peeps, Kenny Molotov. Check out MolotovPlumbingAcademy.com so you can get courses that are specifically designed to help you succeed in your apprenticeship. Also join our newsletter, that way you know when we have content coming out on the channel, and also if there are any new courses or products coming your way. So I wanted to tackle this topic, which is commercial plumbing and residential plumbing. Which one should you choose? And thankfully, I've had enough experience in both of these that I can tell you some differences that I've noticed along the way and why I opt to do both residential and commercial plumbing. And again, I do a lot more service than I do new construction and those sorts of things. So take that with a grain of salt. You are getting a very specific lens on this. So a couple of things that we have to keep in mind. My main background during my apprenticeship and through getting licensed was doing residential service. I worked a lot in high-rise residential buildings. I've done all sorts of remodels in those sorts of situations. I've done also a lot of service calls for risers, for drains, for cast iron pipes, for copper pipes. So that is kind of the roots of my previous experience, right? The second thing that you have to know is within that, were sprinkled a few jobs where I did commercial work. And I did a lot of commercial service. And then my father and I, when we were working together, we built a few coffee shops together. I think it was 3 or 4 along the way, but I did a lot of commercial work in that instance as well. So I do have a decent knowledge of commercial work. And then when I stopped working for my father, I spent an entire year working for another plumbing company where I was also doing commercial work for them. They dabbled very little in residential, but for the most part, we were in these commercial factories and we were doing major work on some really cool stuff I had never seen before, but had a lot of fun learning. So I want to answer the first question right away, which is, which should you go for? Now you're probably sitting back going, but you didn't tell us any pros or cons. Why? How would you already make a conclusion on this? I'm going to tell you why, and then you take my 2 cents with that. I don't think it matters whether it's commercial or residential at the beginning of your career. I think you need to understand that. Plumbing is plumbing. You need to go wherever they hire you. So in other words, if you're trying to get your foot in the door, I don't want you specifically choosing a direction. You don't really have the luxury for that at this point. What you need to do is send out resumes to everybody that's a plumbing company that can register an apprentice, send your resumes there, and then get hired. And from that moment on, you are doing that kind of plumbing for as long as you can. You see what I'm saying? It is later on in your career that you can finally decide, you know what, I'm going to do residential versus commercial, or I'm going to do industrial versus everything else. That's when you can make that decision and make that switch. But at the beginning, no, man, beggars can't be choosers. Get your foot in the door, period. All right, get your foot in the door, get registered as an apprentice, make sure the ministry knows your name, and from there, start getting that experience, okay? Residential experience or commercial experience or industrial experience is important experience. That way you can go to your leveled schooling. That way you can start leveling up, making more money. That's my opinion on the subject. Get your foot in the door. It doesn't matter what sector you're in, okay? Now, what I have experienced from commercial versus residential is, number one, there's a large material discrepancy. So in other words, in each sector, you're going to be dealing mostly with different materials. They're all going to be pipes, but they're going to be different materials of pipes. So whenever I work in high-rise residential, I'm usually using copper or I'm using brass. And if we're dealing with large diameter pipes like storm pipes and whatnot, we're doing cast iron. We are using materials that fit residential areas because there are certain codes for fire rating, and we're using materials that are good for that fire rating. So a lot of times it'll be those materials I just listed. But when we go over to the commercial side, what I noticed is instead of your ABS pipe, which goes into your single family dwelling housing, everything shifts over to a different type of plastic, which is System 15. We typically see System 15 in most applications in commercial, unless you require a larger or a higher fire rating. In that regard, if you need a higher fire rating, then you're going to go to XFR, which is also a PVC pipe. It's system 15 as well, but it's got that extra fire rating to it, so they have to dip that pipe in a special solution that makes it produce even less smoke than System 15 does. And then I was blessed to work with this plumbing company I was telling you, and they were dealing with Schedule 40 and Schedule 80 PVC. They were also dealing with, CPVCs that can handle chemicals. We were working with these large machines, and you'd walk into this factory and you were so impressed at where this chemical is going, how is it getting there? There's a pump introduced. Oh, we're pumping it up and all the way there. There's its own water treatment center inside this factory, like really impressive stuff. And when we got in there, I just started looking at the piping, and all the piping was different than what I normally handled in high-rise residential. But here's one thing that I really want to kind of stipulate. When I got into this plumbing company, it was a little jarring, especially at first, because we were doing a lot of the things that I did very limited amount of experience on. So for example, we were always using 3/8 threaded rod in commercial. We were always using beam clamps. We were always using nuts and washers for that. I started for the first time watching people pull out bandsaws to cut the 3/8 threaded rod. I don't have a bandsaw in my truck. That's not something I've ever done before. I've never needed to cut enough 3/8 threaded rod where a bandsaw made a lot of sense. But for this crew who only did commercial, the bandsaw was a dream, fam, and I would love to have one of the miniature ones on my truck very soon. Fingers crossed, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, all of a sudden I was doing stuff that I've done before, but never to the same volume that I was doing it with this plumbing company. The next thing that I noticed again is we're using a lot of Schedule 40, Schedule 80. We are using System 15. These are pipes that I've used before, especially when I was building my coffee shops. It wasn't something we packed on the truck every single day because our bread and butter was high-rise residential. So a lot of times we had 1.25" copper on us, drainage, 1.5" copper on us, drainage. Sometimes we had pressured copper on us for risers and this and that. Like we had that sort of material. But on every truck that I went to at this plumbing company, every truck had a lot of System 15. And every once in a while you'd have an XFR pipe, had a lot of Schedule 8. Like it was really, really impressive. The other thing that I noticed about commercial was that, especially because we were working on all these large machines that were taking these chemicals or water or whatever it was, we also had to get very specific materials that would never be used inside a residential application. I even forget the names, but there were certain connectors where they would connect hoses. And I remember we would go to this one company, which was a supplier, and we get specific hose for this specific type of machine. And then we'd have to put that together. Oh, we would use Unistrut. Unistrut is something that I used once with my father many, many years ago in my apprenticeship, but we were using Unistrut so much and so often. We were dealing with supports entirely differently than you would support inside a building. In a building, yes, you do have teardrop hangers, you do have 3/8 threaded rod, but in a lot of circumstances, you have riser clamps. In a lot of circumstances, you are using clips and that sort of thing to support along the wall. You know, so it was cool because I'm all of a sudden I'm seeing a whole bunch of materials and I'm going to new suppliers that I've never seen before, didn't know what their purpose was, but you know, it was a lot of fun. And again, I've had great experiences at that plumbing company, and the people that are there, good people, they treated me well. I learned so much, and we had a lot of fun doing plumbing, man. It was really cool. What I found really fun or really amazing about trying commercial plumbing at this volume was that I was impressed at the crossover from residential to commercial. And what I mean is that, again, you are working with pipes in both applications. The only difference is you're working with different types of pipes in a lot of circumstances. But in a lot of circumstances, I found whenever I was being asked to run pipe, I knew how to do that. That was one of the comforting things that I found. It was like, you want me to run some pipe? And I'd be nervous at the beginning because, yes, I'm handling a new material, but before I knew it, I was like, okay, I've been doing this for 10 years, you know what I'm saying? So like, you're good. So I've been throwing Schedule 8 together. You got to put pipe stays on horizontal pipes. But for the most part, as I was progressing through the projects, I was like, okay, it's just pipe. At the end of the day, it's just pipe. It's something I've been doing for almost a decade. it was comforting to know that you can have that crossover. And then whenever we were in a commercial unit and we had to do toilets, I was like, holy smokes, like I've done hundreds of toilets in my career. I'm good. I know this. Trust me, I know this. When we got to the urinals and the flush valves and all those sorts of things, I need to brush up a little bit because I don't deal with urinals on a daily basis in high-rise residential. I'm dealing with toilets most of the time, but I did touch those things before. Dad and I did do service for some commercial units, and I have seen the different types of valves. So it was one of those things where it's like, I've seen it. I just need you to brush me up on it a little bit, and then I'll be able to take it from there. So it was comfortable and uncomfortable at the same time in those respects, but that's what I noticed. For the most part, it's pipe. For the most part, you're asking for the same sort of fittings. You are doing a lot of the very similar ways of connecting pipe. You are still using MJs sometimes. You are using Ferncos, especially for service. And if you're piping in something, you are using a different type of plastic pipe that you got to use a special type of glue for, but it's the same thing. In low-rise residential, we're using ABS. You got to glue ABS together. In commercial, a lot of times you're doing System 15. You got to glue System 15 fittings and pipes together. So even though there are some major differences, at the end, it's still pipe, you know what I mean? There was one thing that I realized that was a little bit different in commercial, but I can't tell if this was because of the specific factories I was working with, because they could have just been awesome factories, or if it's just the industry standard. And one thing that I noticed is especially with a lot of the factories we'd walk into, a lot of people were hands off. We would have to go see a certain member of the crew that worked in that factory that was part of maintenance, and they would point us out to where the leak was coming from, and then they'd say bye, and they'd take off, sort of thing. Whenever I'd work in high-rise residential, it was a little bit different. The superintendent would take you there. They would be with you for a lot of the duration of the time. And once you were kind of established, they'd walk away and make sure everything was good. I felt that there was a little bit more micromanaging that took place in high-rise residential. Again, that might be the property management companies I worked with versus commercial. Maybe that's because these commercial properties that I was working at with this other plumbing company were awesome. I don't know. But that's one thing that I noticed, that it felt a little bit hands-off and like they were like, you're the professionals, go get it done, sort of thing. So that's my 2 cents on that subject. Do me a favor, let me know if you've done commercial and residential and what your thoughts are in the comments below. Did you enjoy commercial versus residential, or the other way around? Do you not care? Do you think both of them are awesome? Or do you hate both of them and you quit plumbing in general? I don't know. Let me know down in the comments below. If there are any other topics you want me to cover, let me know in the comments below as well. Peeps, do me a favor, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button down below and that bell notification so you know exactly when we're getting videos. Smash that thumbs up, share with friends, and I'll see you plumbers very soon. Kenny Molotov, guys. Peace, baby.